See, before we continue, man, do you mind if I nip to the toilet?
No, you'll sit there and piss yourself.
Just piss yourself.
You'll share man's greatest thrill.
They tried and failed.
They tried and died.
You're dealing with the creme de la creme.
Hello and welcome to episode 17 of the Scratchcast, the alternative music podcast, and currently the 183rd most popular music commentary podcast in Denmark. We're fucking smashing it, Grant.
Yeah, man, living the dream.
I'm Sneds, and as always, I'm joined by the respectable Mr. Grant Patterson.
Hello.
And we are just two Scottish loons who love to talk about music. Fit like a day, Granty boy.
Aye, no bad. Fit like yourself.
Just chaving. Just chaving.
I gone, man.
I don't know why I decided to bring that in this time.
Bit of northeast flavour in there.
A northeast banter. Okay, by the way, if you're listening to this audio only, you can get the full immersive experience by going over to YouTube or Facebook, where you can get the video version of each episode. And conversely, if you're watching the video and are put off by our ugly mugs, then the audio version is available wherever you get your podcasts. So don't say we're not good to you. Let's start off with a couple of bits of news, I guess, pinned to the bulletin board. So we obviously interviewed Fiona Liddell on the last episode, so go and check that out if you haven't already. She's really personable, funny, really fun chat we had with Fiona about all the different things that she does, so definitely check that out and her stuff. Icatan, talk about Icatan again. They've finally released a live performance of 2020. They sort of teased this in our interview, but basically it's performed on top of a mountain in Genoa, a place called Fort Jeremiah. I think that's how you pronounce that. That's on YouTube or on their Bandcamp. Really cool performance, really cool like drone shots, and it's just a really cool backdrop for that EP. And fair play to the band for doing something so ambitious as well. But it's quite funny, like the drummer's like wearing a scarf, and like it must be absolutely freezing. Like, but very worth checking out. Fantastic has just released a new single, so it's a reworked version of Drag Me to Hell. It's just like it's a more epic sounding version of that original one that was on Spotify before. So, and it just really shows off his sort of dark gothic sound, I suppose. On the back of that, hopefully get an announcement on the debut album soon. But if you haven't checked it out yet, go and have a listen to that single, and you can check out our review of Ain't No Man With Money, and we also did an interview with him as well, so worth looking at that. And finally, we reviewed La Bestia de Gavaudan last episode, and very favourably, in fact. And they have just released a new live EP, which is filmed as like a 360-degree live performance. So again, you can watch that on YouTube, and you can like spin the camera around and stuff. It's pretty cool. It's more on the atmospheric side than the sort of heavier side that was on like Kintsukuroi, but it's pretty cool. If you're into the sort of alternative and post-metal, then it's definitely worth checking out. Right, what have we got for you on this month's show then? So, on our single swap, we are discussing Unsmrt Lady by Dry Cleaning and Omega Water by Lonewolves in Paradise. On Submission Corner, we've got the debut album from Mothman and the Thunderbirds. And for album reviews, we've got another 3 debut albums from Girl in Red, Man on Man, and Squid. So we just fire into the single swap then. So as always, on every episode, we give each other a song to listen to for discussion on the next podcast. And on the last episode, I gave Grant Omega Water by Lonewolves in Paradise, and Grant gave me Unsmrt Lady by Dry Cleaning. Again, I've done a lot of talking, so I'll let you kick off.
Okay, man. So I'll kick off with Omega Water by Lone Wolves in Paradise. I believe this was released on the 29th of April on Wolf Sounds, spelled WOOLF, which I believe is their own kind of record label. It's approximately 2 minutes and 23 seconds long. The Lone Wolves in Paradise, I think, are a two-piece band from Antwerp in Belgium. I couldn't find a whole lot of information about them online. They do have a Bandcamp page. They do have a Facebook page. But other than that, I think they maybe have an Instagram as well, but I didn't actually check that out. And obviously they're on Spotify, which is where I listened to this track. They have released a number of singles now, however, the most recent of which was released back on the 4th of March. That was The Mistaken Man. They describe themselves as an underground rock band, and I think that's a pretty apt description, to be honest, going by this track. It kind of felt like a lo-fi garage rock number. I've described it as, that doesn't feel as if there's a hell lot going on in the track. The instrumentation is pretty simple and straightforward. And it kind of plays second fiddle to the vocals in the track, which feel a bit more prominent and pronounced. However, if you do listen carefully, you hear the odd sample being used here and there. There's this kind of odd swooshing sound, a wee bit of reverb and echo on the vocals, I believe. I've described the lyrics themselves as being quite tongue-in-cheek. They're basically espousing the benefits of drinking plenty of water for your body health in this kind of talk singing fashion. The guy sings in a bit of an accent as well. Towards the end of the track, the vocalist sounds as if he's evoking the spirit of the Idols song Danny Nedelko, where he sings the W, the A, the T, the E, the R, which I kind of liked. And I imagine that must be a nod to the Idols. I don't know if it necessarily works as a single, in my opinion. I thought it was all right, but for me, it kind of felt a bit more like a filler track
Right.
on an album. You know what I mean? Yeah. It was okay. It was okay, I think, but it didn't really grab my attention that much.
Okay. Well, I really, really like it. I really like it. I think they're quite like, it's sort of post-punk kind of thing, but it is quite punky. And they, like you said, there's not a lot about the band available online. But they have like listed their influences, which cover everything from like the Queens of the Stone Age to the Cure via like the Ramones and Joy Division. So I think you can hear all of those influences on the song. It's got this kind of driving punk bass line, and then like a thundering chorus with like these echoing vocals, and there is a sort of Queens of the Stone Age esque like driving riff in there when the intensity kind of ramps up, and I think it's like the bass tone like in that intro and verse that is particularly satisfying for me, and it's got a little bit of punk bite to it, and that just hooks you in before the chorus. I think there is something reminiscent of like Idols or like Viagra Boys, but I guess
I would give you that. Yeah, I could see something like this being on the likes of a Viagra Boys album, but as I said, as a kind of filler track, I don't know if it necessarily stands out as an obvious single for me.
I mean, fair enough. Did you pick out the part from Donkey Kong Country that I was talking about last time?
No, I totally forgot that.
So like, I think it's just before the second chorus. It just there's like a crooning guitar, like it's probably like a synth or like a stylized guitar tone that comes in just before that second chorus kicks in, and it's exactly like the Donkey Kong Country soundtrack, and it's just every time it comes in, I love it. It just brings me back to like playing that fucking level when you're on the mine carts. It's fucking impossible. But it's a really good game and a big part of my childhood. So when that came in, just every time, just puts a smile on my face. So I guess that's a big part of the reason I like it. But yeah, I just think it's just a really fun song. It's pretty brief. It's 2.5 minutes. Doesn't get boring. Doesn't overstay its welcome. And I kind of wanted it to be longer actually, but yeah. So I think this is personally, it's more than a filler for me. I would say. I totally forgot the like Andrew WK style like piano chords like in the last bit as well. Like, so there's a lot of cool stuff on here. Like Andrew WK just plays one chord like really fast, like on his piano.
I don't think I necessarily picked up on that actually.
It's just in the last
few bars or something, right?
It's just like that piano comes in. So it's just like these little bits here and there that come in that just kind of elevate the song for me.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, I've given this a 9 out of 10.
I've given it a 5.
Okay.
Yeah. I think that's in keeping with my opinion on it. Kind of middle of the road. It's not a bad track necessarily.
Just didn't quite hook you in.
No.
As much as it did me. They've got a bunch of singles. They're all quite different. So I think an EP or a full album from them would be pretty interesting.
Is there any talk of them releasing a new album?
I've absolutely no idea. I haven't. One of the guys, presumably from the band, sent me this on Facebook, so I could ask him. I probably should have asked him. But
did they not previously send us? Is it the Woo or Woo? There's a single called Woo, isn't it? Spelled W-U-H.
Yeah, I think what it was is they had like 3 singles out at the time. They just sent us like, hey, we're Lonewolves in Paradise. We've got these songs. So I'm pretty sure The Mistaken Man was on. I think that's on one of our previous playlists, definitely.
Okay.
So yeah, one to watch maybe.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was Omega Water by Lonewolves in Paradise, which is a pretty cool band name.
Yeah, it's a cool band name.
Yeah.
Water, gotta drink enough water, gotta drink enough water. My body health. Gotta drink enough water for my body health. Sugar rush, red blush, all sweat, thirsty head. The W, the A, the D, the E, the R. My body health.
Okay, right. So what did you give me, Grant? Unsmrt Lady by Dry Cleaning.
Yes.
So this is Unsmrt Lady by Dry Cleaning, as I just said. It came out on the 30th of March this year on 4AD Records. So Dry Cleaning are a 4-piece post-punk band from South London made up of vocalist Florence Shaw, guitarist Tom Dowse, bassist Lewis Maynard and drummer Nick Buxton. Their debut album, New Long Leg, came out on the 2nd of April this year, and it follows the 2019 EP Sweet Princess and Boundary Road Snacks and Drinks. Unsmrt Lady was the final single to be dropped for the album's release and landed on, as I said, the 30th of March. So the song opens with a cacophony of crashing drums and shrieking guitars before fading into an effortlessly cool, slightly bending, out of tune guitar riff. It's pretty gnarly. That's the only word for it. It's got that almost so cool I can't be bothered sort of style to it.
Yeah.
And that's coupled with this like plodding kind of bass rumble and low tempo drum crashes. And just when you thought it couldn't get any cooler, Florence Shaw's weary spoken word vocals come in. And as the song goes on, they become almost otherworldly at times amid all the kind of shrieking, crashing instrumentals of the song. interview with Simon Wojciech Levinson. I think he's come up before, of Rolling Stone on March 17th. Florence Shaw said of the song that the lyrics, fat, podgy, no makeup, unsmart lady. She'd been thinking about these things that are supposed to be a source of shame about your appearance and want to use them in a powerful way. Just trying to survive when you feel knackered and put upon and shit about yourself. But you say, I don't care, I'm great. So there are a lot of quotable lines like if you like a girl, be nice, it's not rocket science, or the aforementioned fat, podgy, no makeup, or don't cry, just drive. And I think despite that sort of monotone delivery of the vocals, they're still quite authoritative and engaging. There's some pretty grungy guitar licks in the second half of the song, and there's something really cool about most aspects of the song, I would say. And I have listened to a few other dry cleaning songs. I haven't really listened to the whole album properly yet, but I think this is probably one of my favorites that I've heard so far. So yeah, I think this is really, really strong, a really strong song.
Yeah, I'm the same. I've kind of dipped in and out of the album, and yeah, from what I've heard, I've really liked. Obviously, the spoken word type of stuff is kind of right up my street at the moment. So this, this really kind of tickled my fancy, and I think you would agree. I would agree with what you're saying about kind of Florence Shaw's vocals. I've described them as being quite dry, almost sardonic, but it is delivered in this kind of effortlessly cool, almost nonchalant kind of way, which is really engaging, like you said. I thought like towards the end of the track, I think you said that it's kind of sounding quite grungy. I kind of felt as if it almost took on a kind of classic rock, almost kind of Black Sabbath feel.
Right.
In
Yeah.
terms of just the guitar riff, I felt as
Yeah.
if that would quite easily slot into a kind of Black Sabbath song. But yeah, I really enjoyed this track. I don't know what you've rated it, but I gave it a strong 7.
Oh fuck! I've gone in for a 9 again on this one.
Yes.
I really like this as well. It just something something just clicks with me. I think all of the elements just kind of work so well together. Like I said, it's of the dry cleaning songs that I've heard, it's probably my favorite. So I wouldn't necessarily give all the other songs I've heard a 9, but
Yeah.
this yeah, really strong.
Cool.
And it's the song. I think it's the song to give someone if you want them to get what they're all about, I suppose.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm trying because it was McInnes that recommended dry cleaning to me, but it wasn't this song. I'm trying to remember what the name of the first single was. Is it Scratch Lanyard or something like that?
It could be. It could
I
be.
think that was their first single.
It's definitely one of the songs. Yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't particularly bowled over by that one, but I really enjoyed this one. Yeah, and I'm gonna sit and listen to the album more detail, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I think on the strength of this, it's worth definitely checking out the rest of the album. Cool. Okay. So that was "Unsmart Lady" by Dry Cleaning.
Don't cry, just drive. Fat podgy, no makeup. Unsmrt lady. If you like a girl, be nice.
Right. What are you giving me for next time?
I'm going to give you "Do You Mind" by Orla Gartland. I've mentioned her before, back when we were reviewing the Pillow Queen's debut album, and I think I earnestly referenced her most recent EP as Freckles rather than the Freckles season. That was released last year on the 21st of February, but she's been doing stuff for years. She's a singer-songwriter from Dublin. I first encountered her way back in the early days rather, of YouTube. when she was covering the likes of Fleetwood Mac, Haim, Joni Mitchell, releasing some of her own material back then as well. And I've basically been kind of following her on and off since then.
Is it her
This
you
song,
said did music for Fresh Meat, or am I getting that mixed up? Something to do with her brother. Am I maybe?
oh, you're thinking of Charlotte Ritchie?
Yeah, fair enough. Scratch that
Yeah,
then.
you're thinking of Luke Ritchie, who's done
Aye.
stuff with his actor sister.
Sis.
They have released tracks together as well, which is quite good. This song was released as part of a string of singles in the lead up to the release of her debut album, Women on the Internet, which is due to be released on the 20th of August this year. I just really like her stuff. She's done some really cool collaborations with other artists and YouTubers as well, including a cover of Pulp's Common People with a YouTuber called Look Mum No Computer, who I believe is a musician in his own right. He comes up with some pretty ingenious electronic musical equipment, perhaps most famously an electronic organ or synth made using discarded Furbies, which is, yeah, cool but frightening at
Like
the same time.
nightmare fuel.
Nightmare fuel, exactly. So yeah, it was a kind of toss up between this track and another one of her tracks, Zombie, which it's a belter as well and definitely worth checking out, particularly live recording at Middle Farm Records. That video, I watched it on YouTube, but it might be available elsewhere. It kind of really just captures the mood of the song, and they just look as if they're having an absolute ball. But I kind of thought this track might be a bit more up your street.
Cool. So remind me what that was.
Orla Gartland, Do You Mind?
I am giving you Good For You by Olivia Rodrigo.
Mm.
Now, the reason I'm giving you this is I'm kind of jumping on a hype train a little bit. Not that I'm saying I'm hyping it up, but it has been hyped up. It is like a pop song that features a bit of a guitar driven chorus, and it's had like magazines like, you know, rock magazines like Kerrang and stuff like that saying, you know, can this be like a gateway drug into like pop punk and rock for like pop fans? So it's perhaps a little bit of a stretch to call it alternative. Who's been smashing like streaming records all over the world, and Olivia Rodrigo herself is a star of Disney show High School Musical, the series.
Right.
Which is
So is she quite a young lassie then?
She must be. She must be. I mean, I haven't seen High School Musical, the series, Grant. So
You surprise me, Snids.
but I imagine they're all pretty young. So she must be in her like early 20s.
I'm just wondering if I've heard it because I was in somebody's car fairly recently, and I can't remember.
You may well have heard it
I
because
might very well have heard her because it was a female artist, a young female artist, and I can't quite. And I remember liking it. I was just like, that's, you know, this person's taste in music wasn't in keeping with my own. But I mean, when they put that on, I was like, ah, that's something different. You know what I mean? And it did kind of feel as if I'd kind of a foot in both camps, as it were. You know what I mean? The kind of pop kind of scene, something a bit alt, something a bit different.
you'll find out. You'll find out if it was that song or not.
Okay, cool.
So that's what I've given you. It is Good For You by
Good
Olivia Rodrigo.
As in good, like 4?
Yeah, with a 4, yeah.
Oh, hip.
yeah. So nobody who wrote that would use the word hip, would they?
No, that's true. I think nobody below the age of 40 years old probably uses hip anymore, do they?
Hip to be square. Okay. Right. Let's go on to submission corner then. So this is where we discuss some of the stuff that's arrived in our inbox. So if you're listening and have something you'd like us to hear, then you can send it over to us at headscratcher@outlook.com, or, you know, direct message us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, whatever. This time round, we've got Into the Hollow, the debut album from Mothman and the Thunderbirds. So Into the Hollow is the debut album from Mothman and the Thunderbirds, one-man sludge and stoner metal project from Philadelphian multi-instrumentalist Alex Mothman. Just kidding, his name's Alex Parkinson. But I'd love it if his name was Mothman.
That's a pretty badass name.
It would be. So I think Mothman
Mr.
and the
Mothman.
Mr. Mothman, yeah. I think Mothman and the Thunderbirds has probably got a shout for the best band name on the podcast, although this month, although Lone Wolves in Paradise is probably cutting it close. Anyway, the band sent us this. Well, I suppose Alex sent us this like quite a bit before the album actually came out. So we're only just getting to it now, like a month after its release. It came out on the 21st of May. Yeah, so sludge, stoner, and doom are kind of the order of the day here. I'd say they're fairly clear influences from like other realms of metal as well, like Metallica or Machine Head. And, as many kind of those references as there are from the bands like Caius or Black Sabbath, and the sort of doomy end of things. So all of those things are quite evident in the kind of drive of the opening salvo of Mothman takes flight. It's full of the sort of kind of chunky, swaggering riffs of the likes of James Hetfield, Rob Flynn would be proud of, but Mr. Mothman and his Thunderbirds don't wait long to mix things up with a kind of cheeky vocal harmony that's almost ripped from the opening of like a barbershop quartet song or something.
See, yeah, and that's the thing. When I first heard that, I was like, it kind of felt as if it might have, it kind of felt as if it could have came from maybe a Tenacious D album or something like that.
Yeah,
and I was like, I don't know if this is what's the word I'm looking for? Like a spoof album. It isn't at all. Like,
yeah, it's not a spoof album. I mean, one of the
Not at
song
all,
names is
no.
"The Simpsons equals real footage," so there is, a little bit of humor in there, but it's very much like serious musicianship.
Oh yeah, definitely.
There are some sort of cheesy kind of metal kind of moments on there in the lyrics and things. So yeah, that first song I think is a really like strong opener. There's just like it's just the riffs on it are so good, and those weird, like, I don't know where those weird vocals are coming from. It's just like you don't expect them at all. They're just mental, but they kind of work. And there are, you've got your typical metal kind of vocals and gang chants like on the album as well. Like a good example is Hollow Earth, but then that experiments even further with like an almost Daft Punk kind of robot voice kind of manipulation on the vocals, which is bizarre as well. And they're like over the top of like really filthy kind of like Alice in Chains, like Dirt level kind of riffs as well. It's quite, yeah, it's tough to get your head around, I would say.
Aye, and I mean, if you look at the Bandcamp page, I think that they kind of, well, I say they, but Alex kind of prides himself in saying that no two songs sound alike, and I think that's true. But the album still manages to sound like a cohesive piece of work. It doesn't feel as if like the songs have kind of been shoehorned in. And I think you're right in saying that stoner metal, sludge, and doom, classic rock is very much the kind of order of the day, and there's a lot of that in there. But by the same token, on tracks like Cloud Giant, for example, that came out of left field for me. Like, it almost felt as if that song in particular, I mean, that's quite far down the track listing. But that probably wouldn't have felt completely out of place in the likes of a Mumford and Sons album. Like, folky element there. They kind of experiment with kind of prog rock towards the end as well. And rather than dropping that, there's a return to the opening riffs with this kind of prog rock elements, kind of adding a bit more depth and texture to the song, which I really enjoyed. That was one of the standout tracks for me. And although it's a kind of solo project, as you quite rightly said, like he's obviously had help from other artists. I think there's another like 4 artists or something like that who've mostly just provided additional vocals. I think there was maybe one other artist that had provided a guitar solo on one of the other tracks. I couldn't say which one it is. But in terms of The Simpsons equals real footage, I really enjoyed that juxtaposition between the female vocals and that of kind of the kind of quintessentially kind of shouty masculine metalcore howls that you get. And for my money, that kind of reminded me a wee bit of Code Orange at times.
Fair enough, that sort of male female back and forth.
Yeah,
like I'm not that convinced by The Simpsons equals real footage. It's like a storming heavy metal song, and I kind of get what they're going for, like this big like fanfaring like heavy metal extravaganza. I don't know if the instrumental and the vocals gel that well for me on that song, which yeah, I'm not certain about it. It does have like a pretty awesome guitar solo that will full on like blister the skin from your face. Like, so there's like there's a even when I don't necessarily think the song works that well as a whole, there are bits of it that I do enjoy. You mentioned Cloud Giant sound a bit like a Mumford and Sons, elements to it. It conjured up like the scratch for me, like that
right.
sort of folk metal kind of thing. And you mentioned classic rock. There's a bit of that classic rock flair on a Gartland Riders, which has got some pretty wild lyrics about like ancient beings coming to rescue Earth from the destruction by their own hands or something. Like,
it's funny because this album comes at a time where I'm rewatching an old. Well, I'm saying rewatching it. It's quite an old documentary series called Ancient Aliens,
right, okay.
Which I think has made its or scenes from it has made its rounds on kind of meme pages for quite some time now. And I was trying to decipher out some of the titles and the theories and stuff. Like, I know that The Simpsons equals real footage, just to go back to that. I know that there's this theory that The Simpsons have predicted the future on more than one occasion. I'm not familiar with Infinite Ocean and Hollow Earth and Hollow. There's another Hollow thing.
Sun, yeah.
Squonk, I think, is meant to be some sort of Australopithecine type of ape-like creature, I think.
Oh, is it? Right, okay. I just like the name Squonk. I think it's fun to say, but I feel like it's a little bit wasted because Squonk is just like a short melodic interlude, and I wanted it to be this like mad, like full-on mental thing. Because
with them shouting Squonk.
Squonk. I don't know, but I don't know what I just wanted it to be bigger. But then
it's only like a minute long or something, isn't it? It's quite short.
It's just like it just built into Rocco's Basilisk, and Rocco's Basilisk that's probably the heaviest song on the album, and it's excellent, like really really good. Just kind of crushes from start to finish.
Yeah.
I think along with I think Rocco's Basilisk and the opener are probably my favorite tracks. Some of the vocals here and there are great on some of the songs, like Nomad. There is a good bit in that which has got like really ogre like vocals. Like, you think of you ever seen the original Mortal Kombat movie from like the 90s?
I've seen bits of it. Well, I've seen it.
This character Goro, and the ogre vocals just sound like Goro, like a vicious like four-armed beast. So it's there are a lot of really good bits in this album, but I guess I don't know, Hollow Sun is a bit of a weird opener because it's a lot like brighter sounding than most of the other stuff that's on there. It does look like a really cool like spiraling riff in it that comes in and out every now and again, but it's not the strongest ending, I wouldn't have said. But yeah, overall, I think this is a pretty solid album.
Yeah, definitely. I'm kind of glad that I gave it a third and I think it was actually a fourth listen before I actually sat down and did my notes, because I was listening to it at work and I don't think I was really taking it in. I've been on night shift, so my kind of sleep deprived and addled minds just kind of wasn't really doing it justice. But yeah, there's a lot to enjoy in this album. I think there's a lot of kind of stylistic changes throughout the course of the songs in the album. It makes it quite an interesting listen. And it's only just over half an hour long, You know what I mean? So, you know,
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it could have been like a lot of metal albums are like big bloated, like
yeah,
it hasn't got it's like you say it's just over half an hour, so that's good. It doesn't have time to you know do too much, I suppose. Like it
yeah.
does a lot, but it doesn't do too much, I suppose, is what I'm trying to say.
Doesn't overstay its welcome, basically.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. On that note, what have you rated this?
What have I given it? Let me have a look at my notes. I've given it a 6 or a 7, actually.
Yeah, I've given it a 7. I think like when it's good, it's really good, and there's like the odd kind of weaker bits that let it down a little for me, but overall, like yeah, it's a pretty good album and definitely worth a listen. Okay, so that was Into the Hollow by Mothman and the Thunderbirds.
Say something, voices flee.
Do you want me to introduce Girl in Red?
Aye, go for it.
Okay. So, the next album that we're going to be looking at is If I Could Make It Go Quiet by Girl in Red. This was released on the 30th of April on World in Red, which is Marie Ulven or Girl in Red's own record label under license to AWOL Records Limited. AWOL Records Limited are a London-based distribution company who claim to offer an alternative to traditional record companies by working closely with musicians and artists on their own terms so that they retain creative control of their work and receive the lion's share of any profits and revenue that they make. We previously covered Girl in Red's previous EP, Chapter 2, way back in episode 3 of the Scratchcast podcast, which seems like an absolute lifetime ago now. And I think it's fair to say that we both really enjoyed it. I certainly felt as if it had a really kind of lo-fi, laid-back, almost autumnal kind of feel to it, which I really dug. As I said, I think we both kind of reviewed it fairly favourably. I kind of felt that the EP was kind of reminiscent of the type of thing that maybe Camera Obscura might have done back in the day. And I would say, with regards to this album, there's probably less of that type of thing on here. For my money, the tracks in this album, for the most part, feel more like the song perhaps Dead Girl in the Pool in that EP in terms of their sound and production. They certainly feel bigger and more polished. Girl in Red certainly is getting a lot more media attention. I think she played, I can't remember what track it was, but she played on the Jimmy Fallon show about a month or so ago. The album bursts straight out the gates with the opening track Serotonin, which is immediately engaging from that crunchy wee kind of guitar riff in the opening bars of the track to how the song slowly builds and gets increasingly more layered and textured with an electronic drum beat, some really cool fat and bassy synths or electronics. And I found her way of almost kind of rap singing really enjoyable too. And I particularly loved the bit where she just sang gibberish.
Aye. That kind of rapped a bit actually because Serotonin, like when you first hear it, you can hear that noticeably like poppier production value.
Yeah.
That rap section, it kind of put me off a little bit because it's like, oh, this sounds a bit like Cardi B or something like that. Not
Okay.
that I'm like au fait with that kind of music, but that's what it kind of led me to straight away. But actually, the more that I hear it, the more I like it, and yeah, I'm over it now.
It might have actually been that track that she played on the Jimmy Fallon show, actually.
But yeah, I think even though you've got that like poppier production or more polished production value at the start, I think the very first section of the song still very much sounds like Girl in Red. Like,
Yeah.
it's got that kind of style that was on chapter 2, albeit just a bit more polished.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What did you think of the second track, Did You Come?
It's like, yeah, it's cool. It's like, it's taken like a subject of, I think, infidelity, like lays like a lyrical blanket over a driving, bouncy bass line. There's twinkling piano keys. Like, the lyrics are really apt. Like, they go, was she good? Just what you like? Did you come? How many times? Tell the truth. Wait, never mind. It's like searching for sense in like an awful situation through questions you don't really want the answer to, and at the same time, it's also a low key banger. So it's like, yeah, it's got good lyrics, and it's a banger. It's a really good song, man.
Yeah, it was one of my favorite tracks on the album. I think those first couple of songs are really strong way to start the album. I particularly liked her vocals on "Did You Come." Like, particularly like that inflection in her voice when she sings, "You should know better now to fuck it up and fuck around." It's such a wee kind of hooky line. I just can't help but sing along to it. It's great, and it's quite refreshing to hear somebody sing kind of totally unashamedly about same-sex relationships, which coincidentally is how she's since become a bit of a queer icon in her own right. I mean, she's always kind of sang about those types of things, and she touches on that throughout the course of the album. The third track, Body and Mind, probably one of my least favourites on the album. However, by the same token, it's nevertheless not without its merits. For me, I'm never too sure whether I get or whether I reference my genres correctly or not, but it kind of felt as I've had a kind of bit of a kind of trap hop kind of vibe to it, which came out of left field for me after listening to the two previous tracks. I did quite like the vocal section at around the 140 mark, which feels like it could be a big crowd pleaser and a massive kind of sing-along moment when she comes to play it live, or when she does play it live. There's also a bit where she effectively sings the album's name or the title around the kind of 2:23 mark. Felt very much like something you might have heard in a Billie Eilish number for me. I don't know if you picked up on that.
Billie Eilish is not
on your radar.
I've heard Bad Guy.
Yeah.
And maybe a handful of other tracks. I did try, well, I say try, but I kind of skipped through her album like a couple of years back, and I wasn't that excited about it, and I haven't really gone back to it. So I can't really compare it, to be honest. But I will say, Body and Mind is actually one of my favourite tracks on it.
Fair enough.
And it's that like weird like organ chord that makes up the melody. It's just, for some reason, it reminds me of like 90s boy bands like NSYNC and Backstreet Boys. Now, that's not something I necessarily like or go back and listen to, but it's just so cool. And it's got like this really restrained, moody verse that just builds into this big booming synth-laden chorus. And I love it, man. I think that organ sound, that cheeky little organ chord sound, just is great. And I think it's a really strong track.
It's quite interesting about what you just said there, though, because like I thought, where she has that kind of digitalized vocal section.
Yeah.
You know which bit I'm talking about, because she does actually sing the lyrics, "If I Could Make It Go Quiet," and I was like, that sounds like something straight out of a Billie Eilish song. And as it turns out, there's a pretty good reason for that, as the album was in fact co-produced by Billie Eilish's brother, Phineas. So yeah, I just thought that was quite interesting. I don't know if that was deliberate, almost as if it was like almost a kind of calling card of sorts. I don't know.
Yeah, perhaps putting your own little
Possibly
mark on it. Yeah.
I'm here, mate. Yeah, I don't know.
What about, did you get Sinead O'Connor vibes from Horny Lovesick as well, or is it just me?
I didn't think Sinead O'Connor. But then I'm not particularly au fait with Sinead O'Connor's music either, to be honest. I only know really.
I
Is
know
it
nothing
Haunted?
compared to you. That's
Yeah,
and
that
that's the
and
song,
Haunted.
and that's the song I mean. Like, there's a bit of it just follows the same sort of cues in the way that it moves forward, and then Horny Lovesick becomes a lot more kind of whimsical after the first minute. But it's that first section, it's just like a classic kind of lovesick pop song, and the lyrics are attuned to that, I suppose.
Yeah, I quite enjoyed "You Stupid Bitch."
That's
Is that your favorite
there's
track
one
on
of,
the album? Was that
well, there's
no?
there's a few. So Body and Mind, You Stupid Bitch, and probably Apartment 402, I think, are the ones that stand out the most for me. And Stupid Bitch is just like a brilliantly written pop banger. Like,
Uh, yeah,
it's
I've described it as a perfectly executed pop punk number.
yeah. And that, that vocal hook of "You Stupid Bitch, can't you see the perfect one for you is me" is
Yeah,
just like so
Switch.
like you hear that once and you're singing along to it like, you know, weeks later. It's brilliant.
Yeah,
There's a lot of strengths on this album, the vocal performance in particular. Um, and Apartment 402 shows that off, I think. And it's just like this devastating, aching vocal performance. It's got like a heartbeat sounding bass thump to it. The guitars and piano sound quite far away and shimmering, and it's just everything kind of comes together in a really satisfying way. And that, like I said, that is definitely one of my favorite tracks on here.
I quite like Rue as well. Just really particularly like that kind of driving drum beat, which I found really effective. The whole track kind of felt as if it kind of put me in mind that as something that kind of First Aid Kit might have done as well.
But I couldn't really figure out because there was something familiar about it. Like it's got like this sort of gallop. Is the
Yeah,
only way
yeah,
I can
I think
describe
that's a
it.
really good way of putting it.
Well,
Actually, aye.
quite put my finger on why it was familiar. So it could be kind of first aid.
Well,
Yeah,
I
as you
was
say.
thinking like First Aid Kit, possibly even of Monsters and Men.
Yeah.
You know, one of those types of bands.
But it's like, yeah, I would say so. And it's got like that kind of pop element that's almost countered by the sort of spooky delivery, sort of echoey delivery of Girl in Red sort of style vocals. I think it works really well. Yeah. Like I think it's one of these albums where I like every song. Like there are no bad songs and I don't have much to say negatively
I
towards it.
mean, to be honest with you, Sneds, I would have to agree. Although I kind of, shot down Body and Mind, it's not the type of track I would turn off.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I can enjoy this album from start to finish. And, as we're saying you know, when we first started talking about it, it's a really short album as well. You know what I mean? It's what is it, 32 minutes long, did you say, or 33 minutes long?
33. Yeah.
33 minutes long. You know what I mean? It works perfectly.
Yeah. And I think I guess it's maybe a bit poppier than perhaps what I would normally listen to, but at the end of the day, it doesn't really bother me. Like I was initially kind of worried about that because I just thought maybe that Girl in Red kind of sound that I enjoyed so much in chapter 2 might be a bit diluted by a kind of more focused, like more like almost mainstream focused production job. But actually,
It's still later.
it just turns out to be an album of like really well written, catchy pop songs with a bit of an alternative twist. So yeah,
What did you rate it?
I've given it a 9. I really like it.
Yeah, I've given it an 8 or 9. I think you're right in saying, you know what I mean, like that kind of lo-fi indie kind of vibe that first kind of attracted us to her. It's not been lost. It's still there. She's just kind of added to her sound, and she's kind of experimenting with her sound. I think it works. It works really well.
Yeah, man, I'd agree. Okay, so that was If I Could Make It Go Quiet, the debut album from Girl in Red.
I'm running low on serotonin. Chemical imbalance got me twisting things. Was she good? Just what you learned. Did you call? How many times? My heart's out. My guard's down. Or maybe on a bus for a month straight. Shit's fun, but I'm going insane. I can't be your midnight love. You let the wrong people love you. Yeah, I tried to get it off my mind. When the sunlight hits the dust and I can't get up. Break me down and I call you my...
Right, so I think the next one we've got is Man on Man. Yeah, self-titled album. Another debut album, self-titled.
Eponymous debut album.
Eponymous debut, yes, of course. The eponymous debut by Man on Man. This came out on the 7th of May on Scary Monsters, a really good indie label, like Scary Monsters. So, Man on Man describe themselves as two gay lovers making music, which is appropriate given that the band is made up of boyfriend duo of veteran Faith No More keyboardist Roddy Bottom, which sounds like a stage name for a gay wrestler. It's got a hilarious name.
Yeah, it is. Roddy Bottom. Yeah. It just adds to their brilliance.
Yeah. So Roddy Bottom and his partner Joey Hallman. So what I like about this album is just how they wear, I suppose a bit like Girl in Red, how they just wear their sexuality on their respective sleeves in a pretty matter of fact and a humorous way, of course. I mean, there are lyrics like, I took a ride to your house, I pulled your shorts down, I knelt before my swelling king on daddy, or I was frowning down the promenade and then I got to think about sucking you off. So, and that's on 1983. So it's like, you know, this, you know, they're openly gay.
It's novel though, isn't it? You know what I mean? Like, and I think that's part of the reason. If you probably came across it as well, Sneds, when you were kind of researching the album. You know, part of the kind of promo photos, or the promo for Daddy in particular, which I think was one of the first singles of the album, is just these two guys. They're a bit bigger. You know what I mean? They're, I suppose, yeah, they are bigger. You know, big, broad guys.
They're manly men.
They're manly, masculine men, and they're both wearing tighty whities. You know what I mean? And they did that. They did that. What's the word that I'm looking for? That was their intention. You know what I mean? It was when I was reading about it, they were just like, you know, we want to kind of show off our masculinity. You know, so much of the LGBT, or rather the gay community, certainly within mainstream culture, is of just people, you know, perfectly manicured men, you know, and young looking men.
There's a sort of femininity to it, isn't there?
Yeah, aye. Whereas they're you know, they're putting everything out on show, and like you said, I mean, it's quite novel and refreshing, I suppose, for lack of a better word or phrase, to kind of hear, you know, I suppose, gay men talking about this, you know, because I suppose when you think of the traditional gay anthems or gay songs, like, well, or gay artists, maybe like the Pet Shop Boys and that from the 80s, it's all, I don't want to say it's tongue in cheek, but you know what I mean? It's, what word would I use? You know what I mean? They're talking about their sexuality, but it's not immediately apparent. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's maybe not as blatant,
Blatant,
and out there, I suppose, as this. I mean, none of that would really matter if the music wasn't good.
No, that's true. The music's
this is an album full of great songs. And I would say of the stuff we're covering this month. This is the one that I've listened to the most since it came out. Like, so, and it opens in a kind of a strange way, because it opens with a 6 minute long, like, atmospheric kind of
Drone rock.
Yeah, it's like I've said, the Black Angel style
Absolutely.
atmospheric kind of grunt in the start. The lyrics kind of soften the impact of that a little bit. They're a bit more bright and sunny and melodic. And despite it being 6 minute long, it's it still works, because it just doesn't get boring for me. And then that leads into the track Daddy, which is the song that kind of made me fall in love with this band. Like, it's got a strange, almost Beach Boys sound to it. It's got that sort of surf rock sensibility of the Beach Boys, but slowed right down to a snail's pace. And I guess it's like the sort of harmonizing of the vocals and the sort of fleet who bit at the end.
Yeah, that's really good.
And it's got that sort of sunny California style thing. But
To the point where they actually saying we took a truck and drove to California.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a bit Super Furry Animals as well, like weird, like with the weird sweeping electronics, and I guess the sort of they're not high pitched vocals, but they're in this song they certainly aren't, like, they're not a baritone, like, but it reminded me of Super Furry Animals. On other songs, the vocals are deliberately, deep, but on this they're far more light, I suppose. But again, you were talking about the promo shots for the album. The video for Daddy is these two, like, hairy middle-aged men, in their tighty whities, in various situations. But I think the vocals, like I mentioned the vocals earlier, some of the lyrics from the start there, like the opening section, but the chorus, like where they sing, "Daddy, can we keep it? Promise that you'll feed it.
If it becomes psychotic, we'll take you to the beach. Or take you to the water, is it? I think
Take it to the city, isn't it?
Is it the city? Okay.
Yeah, it's just a really, really fun song with this. It's really, there's so many sing along bits as it goes through. So I don't know what else to say about Daddy. I think it's brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, you've kind of described them as being electronics. I might very well be, but that kind of stabbing guitar, stabbing electronics, that you get kind of midway through the song really grabbed my attention, to the point where, like, I'm like singing a lot. I'm singing those bits, rather than the lyrics. I'm actually singing those bits. So yeah, it was a really kind of standout song.
Yeah, there are lots of instrumental parts like that in all of these songs that you hook onto and sort of sing as well. I think, like, it's probably a bit near the end of Beach House, but there are lots of them. But what other songs stand out to you, Grant?
Well, I particularly like the next track. We have to mention the next track. It'd be wrong of us not to. It's So Fun to Be Gay, which I thought was really, I really enjoyed it. It was just really fun. It sounded like the sort of like a kind of happy, clappy music that you might imagine somebody singing around a campfire. And if that was their intention, then it's fucking genius, in my opinion. It's all, you could imagine that's like a song like that being sung in, like, Sesame Street, being like, remember, kids, it's okay to be gay.
Yeah, it's like welcoming. It's got a welcoming sort of sound, like, and it repeats that mantra, "Come along, it's so fun to be gay." I really like the bit where they sort of go, "Birds do it, bees do it, we do it." And then it's like really jovial whistled melody right at the end. I've said this is genius as well.
Really good. To be honest, I can't fault any of the tracks on the album. The next track, I believe it's the next track, kind of Beach House, starts off as this kind of stripped back kind of acoustic number, however, kind of layers up as the song gets a bit more textured. Effectively just kind of documents their life together, living in a beach house, which is where I think they actually recorded the album. I remember reading in an interview that they were living in Brooklyn when the COVID-19 pandemic first hit, and they chose to drive down to a sleepy kind of beachside town called Oxnard near Los Angeles, and I can't quite remember which song it's on. Maybe it's in 1983. There's a brief pause, kind of an instrumentation, and you can hear the sound of kind of crickets and the crashing of waves before the lyrics come in. I think, well, the vocals and the lyrics come in, and I think that you'd imagine that was recorded there as well.
Yeah, I think 1983 is an interesting song because it's got like the most blatant lyrics, like two men flat out saying they want to suck and fuck each other, and but it's the vocals. I think the deep, like but almost baritone vocal delivery is like just works really well with that because it makes it also really manly. It's like because gayness isn't always associated with manliness, and but that just it takes that the gay side of it and puts it firmly next to this kind of manly deep vocal, and I think that really really works.
Yeah, it has a belter of a lyric as well, because it's basically it's meant to be like a text interchange, isn't it? Like,
I think it is, yeah. At least at the start, it is anyway.
yeah, at least at the start. And as you said, one of the characters or one of the singers, whichever way you want to kind of look at it, starts off by saying that they're walking down the promenade and had thoughts about sucking you off. So he texts them or whatever, so send you a text. I can't quite remember what the lyrics are. And then the other one replies with, yeah, hearing you sucking really makes me feel good, but when we are fucking, I feel more understood. I'm like, that's an amazing lyric.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
But I would agree, what I mean? Like, they do sing in this kind of really deep, kind of masculine voice. And I don't know about you, but this track and also Two at a Time, I think the vocals on 1983 and Two at a Time really reminded me of kind of Lou Reed in a way. Kind of reminded me that the Velvet, of something the Velvet Underground might have done, particularly Two at a Time. Like that really reminded me of I'm Waiting for My Man, the track I'm Waiting for My Man.
Okay, yeah, okay. I've kind of gone with I've referenced the Beach Boys again here, just those opening piano chords, like they're really sort of jovial, sort of Brian Wilson kind of esque, I suppose. But I think Two at a Time is or Daddy are probably my favorite song on the album. Between those two, I like the way Two at a Time builds to that kind of repeated line, which is like, look ahead at all the possibilities, living to the best of our abilities. Windows open, yesterday's ability, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then it goes ba, 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 ba. And it repeats that through the song. It's just like the melody, like there's so many really good melodies, whether it's in the lyrics and in the vocals or just the guitars or the keyboards or synths or whatever. Like there's just tons of really good melody on this album.
I liked the last track as well, man. It floated.
Yeah.
It felt different. It kind of, it almost felt a wee bit out of place, but I kind of really enjoyed it nevertheless. It's quite kind of brooding and atmospheric, I suppose, in comparison to the rest of the tracks.
Weird, like rhythmic electronic,
Yeah,
percussion, which is pretty cool. I mean, the song before that, Kamikaze, sounds a bit like Radiant Heart. Like, if you remember those guys, are sort of acoustic, acoustic songs with piano and soothing vocals. So you've got that with Kamikaze. Please Be Friends, another standout for me, particularly in the way it's sort of
I kind of felt as if that kind of vocal refrain of "Please be friends" almost sounds as if he's kind of like pleading with the listener, like "Please be friends, please be friends, please be friends," which I did find really fun. Like,
it's almost, to me, it's like looking back at everything that's happened in the past and seeing all these moments where you've not been accepted or that kind of thing, and sort of saying, let's be friends instead. Kind of, it's quite poignant, I think.
Yeah.
And it's quite forward thinking and forward looking instead of kind of directing kind of malice or hatred to the past. So I think I quite like that. But yeah, I think yeah, I was surprised at how much this album got under my skin. It's just really catchy. I think it's quite theatrical, but without being overly camp, which is like,
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's camp.
it's not.
But I get the theatrical element
Yeah.
that you kind of mentioned. It's certainly the album that I've actually shared the most.
You've shared the most.
Yeah, yeah, I've been speaking to people the most about,
Yeah.
and it's been fairly well received, if I'm honest, by most people.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, if you know, if the music wasn't so good, you can say whatever you want on an album, but if you can't, if you're not backing it up in your lyrics and your music, then
It needs to be the full package, doesn't it?
nobody's necessarily going to listen.
I think it's quite interesting as well. Like, I don't know if you realised this when you were doing kind of research on the album, but Joy Holman as well, just in terms of the kind of lyrical content, that Joy Holman, so Roddy Bottom's boyfriend, was in an alt Christian rock band called Cool Hand Luke.
Right. Okay.
Before he came out.
Aye, so that's a bit like uncomfortable for him, probably.
Yeah. He said that like he enjoyed his time spent with him, but like he knew that he was kind of like almost like living a lie, like he wasn't allowed to be himself, as it were.
Yeah.
So I imagine this would be a massive departure from the type of stuff that he's kind of made in the past.
Yeah, and this absolutely sounds like they are being themselves and having a really good time doing it. So like, more power to them, I suppose.
What did you rate it, my good man?
I would give it a 9. Like it's brilliant.
Yeah,
It's
eight
brilliant.
or 9 for me. 8 or 9 for me.
Cool. So that was the debut album from Man on Man.
All caps. They insist on all caps.
All caps, is that important?
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Right, so is this the final album?
Yeah, man.
Yeah, we're flying through these. Right, so do you want to introduce this one?
I shall. So, Bright Green Field by Squid, released on the 7th of May, 2021, obviously, under What Records. It contains 11 songs and is approximately 54 minutes and 46 seconds long, so just under an hour. It's the Brighton Quintet's debut album and follows the release of their first EP, Town Centre, which was released back in September 2019. We previously covered one of their singles, Broadcaster, as part of our single swap section way back in episode 10 of the Scratchcast podcast. And at the time, the band were very much picked to be the next best thing and ones to watch by various different media outlets, namely the likes of NME and The Guardian. And usually when bands and their artists are kind of talked about in this fashion, it tends to get our hackles up a bit, and there's then this tendency for, I think, both of us to just shut off to them, to be honest. However, with regards to Broadcast, I think we both reviewed the single quite favourably. And although I think we agreed that perhaps the whole album of this type of thing might be a bit of a difficult, dense, almost impenetrable listen. I quite enjoyed this, if I'm honest.
I quite enjoyed it too, but I think it's too long.
Okay. I think it's about horses for courses, if I'm honest with you, Steds. I can see myself listening to this album again, like listening to it a lot. But I just don't think it's the type of album that you would sit down and listen to, if that makes sense. I think it's one that you would kind of like maybe float in and out of.
Yeah, I mean, I've written somewhere in my notes that if someone were to walk in while you were listening to this album, they'd think you were absolutely mental. Like they
Yeah.
would think you were an absolute mentalist because it is crazy. Like
It's a crazy box of tits album. Like it's nuts and off the wall. Like I think, when we were looking at Broadcaster previously, I think we described it as being quite avant-garde and out there. I've described that one song as a sprawling and psychotic nightmarish adventure. And I think you could just as easily apply that same description to a lot of the songs on this album as well. I remember you saying of that Broadcaster song as well that you kind of felt as if you felt your attention waning after a while, but there was the odd hook or stylistic change in the song that kind of helped kind of bring you back. And again, I think there's a lot of that in this album as well. We previously liked them to Black Midi, and there's a lot of similarities there. Like undoubtedly, there's a lot of similarities there.
definitely, there's a band called Black Country New Road who I'm not hugely familiar with, but they are of the same kind of ilk of what I've kind of described as art school indie rock. Emphasis on the art school part, I suppose.
Yeah.
But it's like all of three of those bands, they're like it's kind of weird, jazzy, experimental music, lots of changes in pace and direction.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, there's loads of actually really brilliant and catchy moments as well. But I think the reason I say this is too long is because I think some of the songs, the gaps between the bits that I like are sometimes too long, and there's certain songs where you could actually condense it down into a much like shorter runtime and make it a better song.
Boy
On
Racers for me is one of those tracks. Like it's 7 minutes and 34 seconds long, and for the most part, it's just like some pretty bassy synth electronic reverb, and that lasts for about 3 or 4 minutes.
yeah, it's like the first half is the song Boy Racers almost, and then the second half is like white, like atmospheric soundscape, like sci-fi nightmare, which I quite like actually. I quite like that section. I suppose it's a bit like Broadcaster in that kind of sense, but there are like you could almost make this album have a lot more songs because some of them could be split, or you could just condense other songs to make them a bit shorter. There was one in particular that I kind of thought you could probably boil down to. Yeah, I think paddling, like it's got pretty cool verse parts and like a good chorus section, and then it's just got these long drawn out bits that connect them, and I think you could almost squish it down from like 6 minutes to like just a fun 3 minute jam. So it does feel a little bit bloated, I would say, but like I said, there's a lot of good stuff. I mean, the first proper track, which is track 2, GSK, GlaxoSmithKline, is really, really good.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Like, it's the bass line, the drums, it's got like a neo-noir kind of smoky brass, like trumpet sound, like really groovy guitar licks, and like the sort of yelping, shouting vocal. It's quite startling, and but it's a proper like jam at the same time. Now the the vocals, I really like them on GSK, but like you move into like the next song, like Narrator, and that yelp just starts to grate like a little bit, like and that happens various times throughout the album.
Yeah, I mean, I have said of GlaxoSmithKline, what is it? GSK.
GSK, GlaxoSmithKline.
GlaxoSmithKline, sorry. Yeah, I've said of that song, I really enjoyed that song as well. I thought it was a real groove. But the lead singer, Ollie Judge's vocals, I imagine that would be an immediate turn off for a lot of folk. Like, I've likened them to the type of thing that you'd have probably heard from quite a few kind of post-punk bands from the 80s. Kind of reminded me a bit of kind of John Lydon's Public Image Limited. There's elements of kind of talking heads in there as well, because he kind of sings, albeit kind of more manically at times than others.
It's a
But yeah,
feature of like crap indie bands as well, though, isn't it? Like the sort of yelping thing.
yeah, I suppose. What sort of thing are you thinking of? What sort of
I don't
bands?
know. I just think of the sort of generic like term like landfill indie. Like that makes you. I don't know. I can't give you any like specific like bands that I'm liking it to, but it just gives me that feeling of like crap indie. But I don't, GSK, I think he gets away with it. I don't think it's that. I think it's good on GSK. I think it works because it never gets quite as high pitched on as it does on some of the other songs, which is when it grates a little bit with me.
Aye, it's funny you mentioned narrator. Like and I think we actually said the same of Black Midi actually when we reviewed Black Midi. I can't even remember the name of the album now. It was like Schlagheim or something like that, wasn't it?
Schlagenheim, yeah.
Was it? Is that what it was called? Something like
Schlagen,
that, wasn't
yeah.
it?
They've since released another album which I haven't really given a shot, but
No, I think I watched some of the promo stuff, but I haven't actually listened to the album yet. But I think we said of the vocals in that Black Midi album that the kind of vocalist almost uses his voice as an instrument in and of itself, and I would say the same is true of this album, and particularly on Squid. There's a point where you can hear stabbing, kind of shrieking guitars, and then his vocals almost mimic that to a point.
yeah.
And then that kind of melts away to the point where he just starts singing. Is it kind of B mine or play mine? Sorry, play mine.
Yeah.
And
I'll
it
play
takes on a
something like that, isn't it?
yeah, but it's just like play mine, and it takes on a bit more of a kind of somber tone, certainly in terms of the vocal, his vocals. However, that's blanketed over the sound of this pretty mad and frenzied instrumentation, kind of warbling away in the background. That kind of ends with these kind of blood curdling screams from the featured female guest vocalist Sky Murphy, which for my money kind of felt like a maniacal Great Gig in the Sky by Pink Floyd.
There's a section, narrator's 8 minutes long, so there's a lot of things.
How long it is?
It's 8 minutes long, yeah. There's a lot of stuff happens, and there's a section where those female vocals come in. It's almost like Je t'aime or something, like a song like that. It's like whispered, like soft. Like there's that whole section, but then there's that whole crazy like maniacal section you're talking about. The song starts off as like a typical like indie song as well. It's like goes through a lot of changes, but bloody hell is it long. And that I'll play mine part, that goes on and on and on. And I mean a less patient person might have turned that off, like because it goes on for so long. But it's okay. And this is the song in particular that made me send you that clip from Spaced earlier. So the sort of scene where they go to visit Vulva, and you've got that crazy end to narrator is just like, I'll splice the clip into the episode after I've spoken about it. But yeah, that part is just Vulva. It's absolute nonsense, but kind of entertaining nonsense.
It's quite interesting though, because isn't there's a lot of kind of similar stuff on that Black Midi album as well, isn't there?
Yeah, there is.
I don't just mean in terms of like me messing about with time signatures and that, but there's a lot of screaming on that album as well.
Yeah, and like bizarre vocals and stuff like that, and like weird, like long instrumental parts, like, and it goes through. It can be like really atmospheric and then really intense. Which I suppose it's like sort of that's the whole jazz thing, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's quite
Well,
experimental.
I think if you kind of look back and when these guys started and how they started, I think kind of they're all kind of schooled in modal jazz. And I don't know I don't know what that means, but I know what jazz is. You know what I mean? So yeah, there's definitely elements of that in it.
I was listening to the song Peel Street, which has got
Mm.
like I quite like the start of that song. It's got like these like bleepy bloopy electronics that I've likened to like the inside of the TARDIS or something like that. And then like it hits a pretty cool groove when the drums and bass come in. The vocals put me off a little bit, but that groove is pretty good and it kind of layers up. But the song kind of changes into something else.
How would you
Well,
describe that section?
I haven't really described it. What I have said is that I didn't, the song could have ended at 2.5 minutes, like, and that would have been fine. And then I was thinking that as I was listening to that second part, and then the lyrics are like, "Well, I've always been told what to do, but now I'm free," and it felt like a bit of a fuck you, like directed right at me for thinking that at the time. Because I was basically thinking, right, I've had enough of this. And he's like, well, I've always been told what to do, but now I'm free. And it's like, yeah, okay, fair play.
Aye, I mean, I noticed that change in the song as well. And it's almost like this kind of almost calypso kind of samba vibe to it. I don't know if I'm describing it correctly, but it's a major gear shift anyway
Yeah.
from the previous part of the song. But yeah, it has a kind of dark and kind of brooding atmospheric kind of feel to it as well. Aye. Quite a lot of strange kind of lyrical content throughout the course of the album, in particular like documentary filmmaker. So we're kind of going up the track listing from kind of Peel Street.
Yeah.
Opens with this kind of really groovy, jazzy trombone section with kind of warbling electronics, which I enjoyed. And again, I'm sounding like a broken record here, but like it is kind of the same as that Black MIDI album. We said of that Black MIDI album that there's loads of little bits where you'd like, I just wish they did maybe a bit more of that, less of this. I felt that of that song documentary filmmaker, because I really enjoyed the opening, but then it descends into more of that kind of pretty shouty, craze section about the differences in weather. Like, what was it? It was like it snowed in February. It snowed in February, but it was warm in the summer or something like that.
It's the delivery as well. Again, this goes into vulva territory, where it's like he says it's warm in the summer but snowy in February. But it's the way he says the words and delivers them that kind of it's really bizarre.
Again, I suppose using his voice as an instrument in and of itself. And then, giving us some pretty sound financial advice whereby he tells us to buy our Easter eggs after Easter because it tends to be cheaper around about that time. Like, nice. I remember that.
Yeah. But in the same time, he's talking about sweat dripping off his sheets and the sweat dripping down on
Plastic sheets as well. And I was thinking, who the fuck sleeps with plastic sheets?
Well, he's in a hospital ward, it says. So he talks about the documentary filmmaker passing by on the hospital ward. So it's almost like he's in like an insane asylum and somebody's come in to like film the patients or something and he's observing it. And he is a lunatic, like in the asylum. That's kind of the vibe I got from it because it does sound like the ravings of a lunatic, especially that warm in the summer, snowy in February part, because he sounds like he's off his head when he sings that.
Yeah.
Like completely off his head.
Aye.
And if you can get into that, then you'll enjoy that quite a lot. And I do like some of those bits where it is completely mental. But there are other bits that it's just great a little bit.
Sneds, there was a lot of bits that I really got into. Like I really enjoyed some of the grooves on this.
Yeah, some of the grooves.
Album. Like I remember like sitting writing my notes and fucking just rocking out to some of the bits.
Yeah, there are some really awesome bits like that, man. I would say GSK is definitely one of the highlights. Global Groove as well.
Yeah, it's a good track.
That's brilliant. Those are the two standouts. Most of the other songs have got peaks and troughs, I suppose, in terms of how much I enjoy them. But you know, it's a bit too long. Some of the more indie or weird parts don't always land for me, but there are good parts to every song on the album.
Mm-hmm. What did you rate it?
I've given it a 7 because I think, like I said, there are good parts to every song, and I think, I mean, you said you would go back to it, and I think I will too.
I would, but I do genuinely think it's because obviously there's a kind of alt rock experimental vibe to this album. You know, I think I probably made that pretty obvious by this point. And I was thinking, you know, when it came to kind of rating the album, you know, I had to think to myself, well, how do I consume the other kind of alt rock and experimental albums that I listen to? I don't tend to listen to them like whilst driving. I don't tend to listen to them like, say, if I'm on a train or a bus or whatever. I have them on the background. You know what I mean? Like they're a soundtrack to whatever I'm doing that day or in that moment. And I just kind of like float in and out, you know?
Yeah.
And I think for that reason, I could see myself listening to this album quite a lot. So I've given it an 8. I've given it an 8. I was tempted to even give it a 9 because, like I said, you know, that there were times where I was just sitting writing my notes or I had it on the background and I was like, fucking hell, like I just really got into the groove. But I mean, I think this will be a divisive album. You know what I mean? As I said, I think the guy's lyrics, Ollie Judge's lyrics, lyrics and his delivery, vocal delivery, will turn off people immediately. So it's certainly not an album for the faint-hearted at all.
Yeah, I remember saying that about Broadcaster. It was one of the same
Yeah.
my criticisms about that song. I think I gave Black Midi an 8. So I think it's almost like, you know, you can you. I don't know. I don't know why I've given that a slightly higher score than this. Just what I'm feeling at the time, I guess. But they are quite.
They are very similar. I think.
Quite similar, yeah.
Very similar. Yeah, I mean, and I suppose we've both been pleasantly surprised by both bands.
Yeah, that's fair to say. Okay, so that is Bright Green Field, the debut album from Squid.
Bright neon lights on the hillside. Snowy in February, the sweat drip off my plastic sheets. We're still tapping away to the global groove.
Okay, right. That is another episode of the Scratchcast in the bag. We'd love to know your thoughts on what we've covered. And if you do like any of the bands or artists covered, then make sure you send some love their way and support them by buying their shit. If you want to support the show, then make sure you subscribe to the Scratchcast wherever you get your podcasts. And please leave us a nice review, as this helps spread the good word. If you want to go a step further, you can buy Grant and myself a coffee at buymeacoffee.com. But you can also leave us a message and let us know how you think we're doing, what we can improve on, and what you think we should cover in the future. If you'd like to be featured on Submission Corner, then send your submissions to theheadscratcher@outlook.com or message us on your favourite social network. And if you can't wait for the next episode, then you can head over to theheadscratcher.com, find all our pop culture reviews, recommendations, music playlists, interviews, and of course, all the previous episodes of podcast. By the time this comes out, June's alternative music playlist will be out, and some of our choice cuts from that are A Villain's Monologue by Blood Command, Fat Dracula by Sugar Horse, This Love by Brand New Zeros, and The Open Road by The Hell, featuring Jamie Lenman. So there you go. I almost went an entire episode without mentioning Jamie Lenman.
I thought you were going to mention him when you were talking about Big Scary Records.
Well, I could have done. I snuck it in at the end. Finally, if you made it this far, all that's left to say is thanks for listening. And as always, please tell your friends, your colleagues, your parents, and your pets. We'll catch you on the next episode. Bye.
It's not finished. It's finished.